What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the 39th episode of the Cycle 365, which is recorded on June 29th, 2020. Before I move on, happy early 4th of July, or, whatever. I am one of your co-hosts, Simon Voyenos.
I am one of your other co-hosts, Cody Stoffer. And we got Liam again today.
Hey, how's it going?
Is there like an initiation to be a co-host? Like, is there a certain number of shows?
This is his second time. We got Liam Hughes back. And, Jesse, he's a little busy moving right now. He's transitioning in life. Say, as we all are, I guess. That was really cheesy. But we're going to talk about football. And this is all levels of football. This is something that's been talked about a lot over for quarantine, really, and we didn't really address it because we wanted to talk about other things. We can because it's our show. So now we're going to talk about it. So it comes down to the one question that we have for us right here. Which state produces the best football players? Actually, we could make it more specific. Which state produces the best NFL players?
Well, I was going to say we're going to be looking at this topic from a variety of viewpoints, because we're trying to take in historical turnouts, in the NFL, as well as, which state produced the best NFL players. So looking at that as well. And also looking ahead into the future on which states might grow or plummet or anything in between.
Very true. We're going to cover it all. I mean, because this is honestly question that deserves more than one segment, I would say, because it could get pretty deep. I, as a fellow Texan, I'm already conditioned to say Texas is easily the best state and will always be the best state. But, there's some homies from Florida, California who might say otherwise, and they actually might have a pretty good point there. So let's get into it. Cody, I think you have some historical stats regarding, Hall of Famers and their home states, I guess.
Yeah, so the majority of my research revolved around looking through the Pro Football Hall of Fame website and just basically tallying which states had the most representation in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Because if we're talking top of the top talent, it doesn't get better than the Hall of Fame, right? And what I found was really surprising. First off, non-football related. Simon, did you know that there's a Colorado City in Texas?
Yes, I did know that. Did you not?
Well, because I thought I was going to tally another one for Colorado because it said Colorado as the high school, and then it said Texas, and I was kind of mad. I'm not going to lie. I was like, man, we only have 2 tallies on this whole thing. Like, why you got to play with my emotions like that? Yeah, Colorado high schools have only produced 2 Hall of Famers.
Just wait until I start coaching high school, or you, Cody, but go on.
Let's say I never claimed Colorado to be a football state, but what I did find were, there's a huge gap between certain states and a lot of it has to do with parts of the country, I'd say. Like the North had a surprising amount of Hall of Famers, but there's less than 10 states that produced double-digit Hall of Famers.
Okay, fair enough.
So there's like a pretty steep drop-off after like these top 10 states. And the top ones, or the top states that have produced the most Hall of Famers were in order: California with 34 Hall of Famers, Pennsylvania with 30 Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
29 Hall of Famers from Ohio, the birthplace of football. And the only other state that had over 20 was Texas at 25 Hall of Famers.
Right. Wait, okay, so California was number 1. How many Hall of Famers did they have?
34, 4 more than the next state of Pennsylvania. But I was really surprised to see Pennsylvania be so high. Like,
really?
I didn't know it was like that in Pennsylvania.
No, Pennsylvania used to have a massive. I mean, it still has a pretty big football culture, but used to have a little bit more influence on the NFL.
I mean, you think about it, between the Eagles and the Steelers, there's a huge professional level there. you know. And then you think about it back in the day too, a lot of these cities that have a bunch of, or a lot of these states that have a bunch of Hall of Famers, like when football was first starting, you went from your high school to your local college to your local professional football team. Because it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't a career choice back when it was first starting. So that's why I think you see a lot of Ohio representation here from like ye old days of football when it was still a gridiron.
Hey, I was gonna ask this, but is that list of Hall of Famers from each state, is it the state they were born in or the state they played high school football in?
High school football.
Oh, okay.
This list also, these states other than Ohio weren't super high in, because the Hall of Fame also has coaches and contributors, right? And owners. But a lot of them weren't from these states. Like, I think that Ohio had like the most contributors that were Hall of Famers. So Texas probably has an edge on them in like players head to head. But yeah, I feel like the contributors come from a lot of different states at that rate.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So I'm just gonna put this out there. I mean, because you didn't mention this, that the Hall of Fame is one of the better indicators of success football-wise, and I agree to a degree, but at the same time, I mean, there are definitely a number of players who may have had their career shortened because of injuries, because it is football, it happens, and so they might not be in the Hall of Fame. You know what I mean?
This is true, but I mean, part of finding the answer is, where do all of the best come from? Is kind of the way that I looked at it. There is a bunch of NFL talent that is not included here, and I will admit that though. So,
I mean, like current NFL talent.
Well, current NFL talent, as well as there are still solid football players that won't be in the Hall of Fame. But if you can play in the NFL for a couple of years, I mean, Dre Bly will never be a Hall of Famer, but he was a starter for over 5 years in the NFL, which means something too,
Yeah, no, I totally get that.
Yeah,
I mean, success is success. Sorry, go on, Liam.
Oh, you're fine. I think it's important that we do draw a line of comparison between modern NFL, which is starting to see a lot more influence from southern states now that they're starting to, have a little bit more of a current impact on the NFL play styles, and the older NFL, which was a little bit more northern states controlled.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised to see some numbers on here. Some that, like Illinois, had 19 Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
And a lot of those are old heads.
Yeah.
With no disrespect, just like I said, they grew up in Illinois. They went to their local high school. They went to maybe even straight to the Bears, back when it wasn't like a full-time job, and you couldn't necessarily support yourself off of it, and you were doing other stuff.
Yeah. Whereas like Georgia currently, I think has under 10 total inductees into the Hall of Fame, but if you give that 40 years, they very easily could have 30.
Yeah, they have 6 right now.
Yeah.
No, I mean, absolutely. Like, Georgia recently has been a school, this is just based off of my research, that has definitely been churning out a lot of talent recently, and it's a pretty significant amount. There's a reason why, the University of Georgia, Clemson, that's kind of close to that area, does well. And I think, Liam, you made a really good point that in 40 years this could be very different. But I do believe that there are a set number of states, that will always be one of those powerhouses. So why don't we go ahead and say, each of us, I mean, I could begin, about top 3 states football-wise that produces the best football players. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Do you want it to be current football players?
We could go all time. Yeah, we could go all time if y'all want.
Okay. Do you want to start us off, Simon? Because you introduced it.
Yeah, no, I'll start off. And hold up. So this list can include like current, like, you know, like older football players, like a Drew Brees, or
I think that's fine as long as they're, you know, elite.
okay. So players who are proven and who will probably go to the Hall of Fame, no doubt. Okay. All right. So, all right, let's just say all of our list, and after that, you know, we could discuss it and go into explanations. You know, at number 1, I already said it. Texas, easy. So at number 2, I'm gonna say Florida. That's a little rough. Shoots. I don't know about that actually. Okay, yeah, no, actually, I'll stick with Florida at number 2, and then California at number 3. Top 3 is hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty hard. Those are the schools that I feel like will consistently and has consistently, you know, produced great football players. Yeah.
I'm gonna take your number 3 and I'm gonna slide it up to 1. I think California is the football state, and you know, I feel like a part of that is just like the amount of people there. Obviously, like Texas isn't like a non-populated state, but California just has so many people, and there's just so much talent that comes out of it, and they have a wide range of like different programs. And then, you know, I feel like that the JUCO presence in California allows a lot of high school football athletes to be able to kind of bridge towards Division I and then NFL after that. Like, I know a lot of the guys on the football team at UNC lived in California, played high school football there, went to JUCO, and then came to UNC. So that they're able to feed off of like the local talent at the JUCO level and then continue to produce, you know, from different directions, I guess you could say, into the NFL. Then at number 2, I'm going to have to go with, I'll probably go with Texas at number 2, just because of the talent that has come out of there. And then I'm going to go with Pennsylvania with Florida just outside of the top 3.
Interesting. William, go ahead.
I would say that California definitely is my top number 1. I think, you know, it is super important to take into consideration those players who have already come and gone. But if we're just going off of today, I think California even still would maybe be number 1, because they got Tom Brady, they got Aaron Rodgers, Marshawn Lynch, Eric Weddle. So many, Richard Sherman, you know, Deshaun Jackson, just so many top tier players still in the NFL today that have been in the NFL 20 years at this point leading up. So I think California has to take it for me. Number 2, that's a tough one. My heart wants to say Ohio, just because, you know, that's, like Cody said, that's the birthplace of football. I've been to Canton. I've been to the Hall of Fame, so that's what my heart wants to say. But I will probably say Texas. And
Okay.
but third, I'll put Ohio. Just because I think, I don't know. There's such a football culture there, and it's like the people live and breathe football in Cleveland and in Canton, and it you know, there's a great history there, and they've put out a lot of great players and coaches and staff just in general.
Yep.
Sure.
Ohio is, you know, a great football state, and I wouldn't call Ohio any other state, you know.
Yeah.
Like there, certain states have labels, you know. Like, you know, Colorado, people aren't like, oh yeah, Colorado, that's a football state, you know. We're like an outdoors hobby state, you know. That's like the reputation we have. But like, you know, you talk about Texas, you talk about Ohio, like those are football states. Right. That is the identity and the culture.
Oh, for sure.
State. So
sure, yeah. I mean, Ohio was really close. Honestly, I I don't know. I think it's also because, like I said, I'm biased because I'm from Texas. So if when it comes down to it, I'm probably almost always gonna put other southern states there than the northern states. So that's my thing. But here, let's get into the conversation. So y'all both put Texas at 2, right? Or did one of y'all put it at 3? Okay. Yeah. So y'all both put Texas at 2. No, I mean, like, we could go position for position. Honestly, we could honestly do that. And I still kind of think Texas might have the edge. I'm just being honest because, I mean, do we want to go position by position? Because we can, but I'm saying,
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know about quarterback, dog.
I think California's got you beat by quarterback the whole way through.
Drew Brees, there's no way Drew Brees is the only quarterback from Texas that, like, I'm looking at a list right now, so there we go. There's no way that Drew Brees is the only quarterback. That's kind of weird. I feel like that's not.
Well, I mean, didn't Andrew Luck and Matt Stafford come from Texas? Yeah. But that's obviously a drop off. Like, if you're going 1, 2, 3 versus 1, 2, 3 with that list that Liam put up with Brady, Rodgers,
and John Elway.
And Elway, like that, they don't. That's not a competition at quarterback.
Yeah,
I will say.
Hold up, sorry.
There is an impressive list of running backs to have come out of Texas.
Yeah, no, for sure. And okay, I just looked at it. So Texas quarterbacks were like, I guess the guys I grew up watching. Not really grew up, but like I studied filmed on. So like, Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, those guys are all from Texas. And then obviously Drew Brees. I mean, you could include Y.A. Tittle, Is that? Yeah, Y.A. Tittle? How do you say that? You know who I'm talking about. He's like...
I know. He's the Giants quarterback.
Yeah, and so... Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to quarterback, I'll concede it to Cali. Running back for sure, no doubt it's Texas. You can't compete with an Earl Campbell, LaDainian Tomlinson, Eric Dickerson, Adrian Peterson. Like, it's overkill by that point. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
And Thomas. Another one. Hey, Sammy Baugh is a quarterback from Texas.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess...
Are you really going to compare Sammy Baugh to Rodgers, Brady, or Elway?
Well, he was a revolutionary.
Okay, but we're talking we're talking a revolutionary versus, like, on some lists you can rank the greatest quarterbacks of all time in that order from California.
Fair enough. I mean, that could be argued.
Like, you can literally say
for sure.
the best.
Like I said, I mean, I still give California. Yeah. Well, I don't know about Rodgers, but yeah, sure. I mean, it's pretty close, I would say. But I would. Running back, it's Texas, right? We agreed on that. What about wide receiver? Who are California wide receivers for y'all? Are y'all looking at it? Because I could say, okay, right away, Tim Brown. I know y'all are Broncos fans, so you hate me.
Tim Brown ain't nothing, bro.
What? Brown?
I'm just playing, bro. I'm just hating. Just let me hate.
Well, yeah. There's Lance Allworth. Didn't he play in that Eric? Oh, hold on. No, I'm playing. Never mind. He was an older guy, but he's still on there.
He's still elite.
He is. He is. Oh my gosh. Ray Berry is somebody that, was Johnny Unitas' number 1 receiver. I don't want to say he modernized, wide receiver football drills, but, he did his part for sure. Like a lot of the drills that he and Unitas did together are stuff that are still done today. If y'all watch Peyton Manning's Places on ESPN Plus, this isn't a plug, by the way, but it's a really good show. They actually do a little segment with Ray Berry and Peyton Manning, and Antonio Brown is there too, but we don't have to talk about that. So,
the more I look at these lists, though, I feel like Pennsylvania almost moves into number 2 for me, because
Really?
we want to talk about quarterbacks. This is Marino, Montana, Unitas, Namath, and then also at wide receiver, they have Andre Reed, Marvin Harrison, as well as Belenkoff. Yeah, Beletnikov. I always call it the Belenkoff for some reason. I don't know why. Which he has, the best wide receiver in college. That trophy is named after him, which is different from NFL, but he still was an NFL talent. Jim Kelly was also from Pennsylvania. And then they're not a pushover at running back either, with Tony Dorsett probably being like the biggest name that they have, as well as, like they got some real ballers that have shaped the NFL coming from there.
Yeah, no disrespect towards Pennsylvania for sure, but I don't think that would be enough to push Texas out, because we haven't even got into the offensive lines and defenses, because there's a solid amount for Texas. They got some guys up there for sure, like Gene Upshaw, another Raiders guy. So there you go. There's if we want to go a little bit, yes. What's the word? More closer to today, more present. Lane Johnson's from there. Jason Peters is from there. Forrest Gregg here. I think
Forrest Gregg.
Forrest Gregg, he's from there. So, and obviously, they're known to, churn out some really good linemen. Maybe not Hall of Famers, but 10-year starters, contributors for sure. So I don't think there's any doubt about that. And then on the defensive side, a defensive line is pretty nasty, with Mean Joe Green heading it up, followed by a Michael Strahan, John Randall.
Dude, Michael Strahan played high school ball in Germany, bro.
Okay, sure, but still.
I'm just kidding. I tallied him on Texas.
Okay. Jared Allen, that guy played. He's from Texas, so there you go. And then linebacker Zach Thomas, y'all's boy Von Miller, who's definitely going to go into the Hall of Fame. I don't know, man. There's a lot. And then corners, there's definitely some dudes here. Like Night Train Lane, one of the GOATs in Madden, if y'all remember that. At least
his name later as well in one of our later segments.
It's true, we will. Oh, Mike Singletary is also from Texas as well. But sorry, back to corners, or DBs, Earl Thomas, Darryl Green as well. So Mel Renfro, Ken Houston.
Yeah, yep. And I would say that California, outside of currently like Richard Sherman and Eric Whittle, and I guess Marcus Peters too. Marcus Peters. They're a little thin, right?
Okay.
Well,
yeah.
You were talking about linemen a little bit too, and California also has Anthony Munoz, who's arguably the greatest lineman of all time, but they also have Larry Allen and Gary Zimmerman, so they're not thin at the big boy positions either,
right?
Out in Cali. And then looking through their running backs again just a little bit, they have, there's controversy around this one, but OJ was a great running back in the NFL, OJ Simpson, as well as Marcus Allen, who played for some really good teams throughout the 80s and was a high impact guy. And then one of the players that you like to talk about, especially when it comes to linebackers and just like influences in the NFL, Junior Seau pops up.
I saw that
about California.
Yeah, no, for sure. California has some dudes for sure. Junior Seau. I'll go ahead and throw in Troy Polamalu, Lance Briggs. I didn't know he was from Cal.
Oh my gosh, Lance Briggs! I haven't heard that name in years.
Oh, same. Is he gonna make the Hall of Fame? I don't know if he will or not, to be honest.
It's not looking great.
It'll
for
be
him.
Close.
Okay. So
he might be like a senior inductee at the bare minimum.
Yeah, sure. Would you rather take an all California defense or an all Texas defense? And it's just these two going head to head.
Well, at that rate, I'd probably have to take the Texas team, honestly, just because of the diversity that they have at multiple positions, you know. But it's not by like a lot,
Right.
you know. Like it's
Right.
close. It comes down to hairs.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, these are all time, players that we'll talk about. We'll get into the modern aspect of it like more a little bit later. But yeah, all time. Obviously you're always going to be splitting hairs. Sorry, I
Right.
cut you off there, Cody. But Liam, what do you think?
If we're going with players of today, I'd probably take Texas.
Really? All time?
All time? I don't know. Maybe, okay, players of today. Maybe I would take Cali. Maybe I would.
Okay, yeah.
But all time, yeah, probably Texas.
Okay, cool. So that's already half the football team.
All
Well,
time
I'd say on
I would
offense,
take
Cali has a beat.
Yeah. I mean, even if we go like offensive
Better
today,
lineman?
I think Cali still has Texas beat.
Bro, Munoz, Allen, and Zimmerman. Yeah.
Zimmerman.
Yeah, that's a great line.
It's not comparable at all to Jason Peters. Or here, let me go back. Sorry.
What, Tyron Smith,
Is it-
David Bakhtiari? Come on, those guys are Cali.
Okay. See, now there you go. Yeah. Okay. Sure. But hold up. I did say y'all would rather take the running backs from Texas than California, though, right?
Yeah, sure, but I mean, the wide receiver plays from Cali are better, and it's not like Cali doesn't have great running backs. They got Marshawn Lynch. Arguably,
Yeah, but he's
one of the
not
most
better
dominant-
than Adrian. Sorry, my bad. Go on.
Oh, you're good. I was going to say that Marshawn was arguably the most dominant in his time, in his 2 years, 3 years.
Better than Adrian Peterson?
I wouldn't say better overall, but perhaps more dominant in his scheme.
Bro, I don't mind handing the ball off to O.J. Simpson. He ran for 2,000 yards in 14 games.
I mean, yeah. I know.
It's taboo to talk about, but O.J. really is one of the elite running backs in NFL history.
Yeah, that's fair. But like a comparable guy is Eric Dickerson. He didn't get arrested for. I'm not gonna go there. but I'm just saying, everyone
We're
knows
on the
that-
football field here.
And let's be
Eric
fair,
Dickerson-
Terrell Davis
go
is
on.
Cali too.
Yeah, but I mean, no cat. I mean, here,
How many
I'm not
rings
trying
does
to
Dickerson
disrespect.
have? How many rings Dickerson have?
What?
How many rings Dickerson have?
I'm pretty sure he has none. Why?
You know how many rings Terrell Davis has?
Two.
2.
But you can't say that Terrell Davis is a better running back because he has more rings. LaDainian Tomlinson has no rings, but would you say that Terrell Davis is better than LT?
No, but Terrell Davis was the most important player on the Broncos team during those 2 Super Bowl runs.
LT was important to his teams as well, though.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think in
I'm just
a
saying, if you're
4-year
comparing, like-
period, I think Terrell Davis might have even been the best running back of all time in a 4-year period.
Terrell Davis, no. Terrell Davis was the best running back in the game when Barry Sanders was in his prime, and all those other running backs from 95 to 2000. Terrell Davis was the best running back, and there is no debate about it.
A pretty specific time frame, but okay. I mean, I'm not a Broncos fan or a 90s type of guy, so it is what it is. But at the same time, fortunately, he played for I won't call them incompetent, but Thurman Thomas for the Buffalo Bills. He also went to 3 Super Bowls with the Bills. Obviously, he didn't win. I'm saying that right now. He didn't win. Okay, but he was still good enough to get him there 3 times.
Okay,
You gotta
fair
feel
What was I
bad for
Yeah.
Thurman Thomas.
Yeah,
He's
no,
different.
for sure. Sure. We got our biases. I think. I don't know. I kind of feel like there are some. There's a significant amount of Bronco-friendly players in this California squad, and players not that don't play for the Oakland Raiders and other teams, Chargers as well. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But I mean, we could agree that it's close, though.
Oh yeah, I'd agree that it's close, but I think Cali does take the offensive side of all.
Yeah, sure.
Simon, I do want to talk about your entry of Florida. They're not, as far as Hall of Fame goes, they're not super well represented, but upcoming in the Hall of Fame / looking ahead to the future, Florida's looking really good. And also they have two members of the Cowboys 90 squads on there between Michael Irvin and Deion Sanders. So there's some huge impact there. And another state that I want to shout out for just like historical significance to the game is Mississippi, because that is where Jerry Rice and Brett Favre both came from. And they're two of arguably the best to ever do it. And then there's one other guy from Mississippi. Hold up, let me just check right here. He's kind of a big deal. Oh my gosh, where the heck? Oh yeah, and then also Walter Payton. So they don't have like a ton, but the people that they do have are really elite. And also, there's this website that looks at per capita, and Mississippi is actually number 1 on the Hall of Famer list for like players in the Hall of Fame per capita.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I'll give Mississippi their due. Obviously they're a southern state, so there you go. I mean, there's no surprises there. It's just a smaller population, so it's not like you could expect a whole ton. I do think Florida, low-key, might have a defense that like would say rivals Texas to a degree, because they got some dudes, especially like one. I would say first off, I think the most, I don't want to say most famous, player from Florida, but he's definitely up there. Deion Sanders, one of the best corners to ever play the game. He's there. You got Ray Lewis. You got Brian Dawkins.
Taylor.
Yes, Sean Taylor as well. You got Derek Brooks. I think both of them. No, sorry, Derek Brooks and Derek Thomas. I always get them confused. But hey, both still really good linebackers to play the game. You got Warren Sapp. We got Vince Wilfork. We could even go old school. You got Deacon Jones. There's a dude back in the day. You know what I mean? So you definitely got some really good defensive players from Florida. And then coming up, I mean, you definitely have some dudes that Florida in the Hall of Fame sometime soon, I guess. But yeah. I guess the only knock against Florida would just have to be their offense, because a lot of their offensive guys are guys that like are in the NFL. I don't want to say a lot of them are in the NFL right now, but it's just not as complete as of now, Hall of Fame wise. But in the next 20 or 30, how about in the next 30 or 40 years, you could see a lot of dudes that'll probably make it into the Hall of Fame pretty soon here.
Yeah. I mean, for an example of how kind of lacking Florida is in the offensive scheme, I just Googled best NFL quarterbacks to ever come out of Florida. And at number 4, you got Jacoby Brissett. Number 3, Tim Tebow. Number 2, Cam Newton. And then number 1, Rex Grossman. So that's, I mean, Rex.
Wait, why did they put Rex Grossman ahead of Cam Newton? Are you serious?
No,
did they do
that's a
that?
little weird.
That's disrespect, dude. Rex Grossman is like the worst quarterback to ever be in the Super Bowl. What are they talking about? Rex Grossman? Oh my god! I know that wasn't the point of what you were saying, but that has made me so mad. I'm not even like a Cam fan, but bruh, excuse me.
Is Cam actually from Florida? I thought he was from Georgia. Or sorry, played high school football in Georgia.
Did he? Did he play high school football in Georgia?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Westlake. But he went to college in Florida.
Yeah, this is probably including Florida college people. So not even Cam then. So Rex is top 1, dude.
Well, I was going to say Lamar Jackson, when his career is done, will probably be in that conversation as well, because he's from Florida.
Yeah, for sure.
With his high school looking like a knockoff LSU.
Oh, each their own, am I right? Yeah, so I feel like Florida's up and coming. That's why I had them in the top 3. Georgia was definitely really close. Don't have a whole ton of players like in the Hall of Fame right now, I don't think. They got some legends up in there, like Jim Brown, Herschel Walker, Marion Motley as well. Calvin Johnson. So they definitely got some dudes. Jamal Lewis. Oh yeah, I would that, but I still kept them out of the top 3 of all time, just because I think a lot of their dudes, just like Florida, are in the NFL right now.
For sure. I would like to say that if we're talking just football in general, big shout outs to Nebraska and Alabama.
No.
Hey, why?
Nebraska got like 3 Hall of Famers, bro.
No, I'm saying non-NFL, just football in general.
No, we don't. No.
Go Big Red.
You stop. Get that off my freaking podcast, bro. No,
So
Nebraska ain't nothing.
My entire mom's side of the family's from Nebraska, man.
Since he wanted to get under my skin. That's the real truth.
Yeah, man, I'm a Husker fan.
He's like, what if I go to Colorado and I say, go Huskers?
I'm kidding, obviously.
Cody,
no, Alabama is big, but Nebraska, yeah.
I mean, I guess so, but whatever. Cody, you and I have a mutual friend who's going to Nebraska as a not a grad transfer, as a grad student. I'm not going to drop her name here, but yeah. Anyways.
Wait, I do? We know somebody and we know somebody who came out of one of the football programs in Nebraska, being Hastings, and he was not a fan. One of our very own Jesse Booten. Not glowing reviews from that program.
Yeah, well, can't be perfect.
Well, I was gonna say, I think that considering college's contribution to the NFL is also like a valid thing to do. Like we've been talking high schools the most on here, but I think that, talking like a college football team is a part of like a state's football, what am I trying to say here?
Culture?
Like it's a part of their culture, So like, I feel like excluding, like only talking about high school kind of cheats a little bit like college's contributions to the NFL and like those states, because then, like you end up with like, once again, talking about California, like USC has contributed a ton of players into the NFL, So,
yeah.
But while Texas also has contributed a ton, and, I feel like the state's ability to recruit players from out of state into their state and sell them on their football culture also means something.
Definitely.
Okay. Do you have something to add, Liam?
No, I think it is stated pretty well.
Okay. No, I agree. I mean, do we want to discuss that briefly, or?
Yeah, I'm fine with discussing that briefly. I have a couple of sources here, and I think because then if you want to talk about Florida, then you have like the University of Miami, right? Which has a bunch of, Michael Irvin, Edgerrin James, who's somebody that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. And then, like Jim Kelly, Jim Otto, Ed Reed, like there's a bunch of dudes here, and like the U is one of the best, was one of the better football programs for about a decade there,
No, agreed for sure. And even in that state of Florida, you still got Florida and Florida State. Those 3 teams have basically took turns dominating college football every other decade. So I feel like that can't be ignored either.
Yeah. And then, another thing is Indiana from a high school level has 4 Hall of Famers, right? But if you look at Notre Dame and you look at this list of players, like it's something else. That's Joe Montana, that's Jerome Bettis, that's Tim Brown. Like you don't think, when you think of Notre Dame, I'm going to be honest with you, I had to look up where Notre Dame was located to figure out what state to attribute the credit to, but it's definitely a part of it still,
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, Notre Dame has always had a pretty good historical program, There's no surprises there, I don't think.
I was just going to say, it's just a surprise that it's in Indiana.
Oh, well, I mean, I've always known that. Also, so I have when I was student teaching, my cooperating teacher, her daughter is actually one of the volleyball coaches for Notre Dame's team. And so shout out to her. And so she used to talk about Notre Dame a lot because, her daughter's team and whatnot. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's cool. Then you also have, I feel like the colleges, like I said, are an extension of the state culture, because there's also sufficient evidence on this high school list that's echoed at the collegiate level, because you have Ohio State, who's produced a bunch of Hall of Famers. Like I already said, USC. You also have Pitt, has contributed a big handful of Hall of Famers too, So it's a sufficient echo that I think needed to be brought up while talking historically.
No, for sure. I mean, I agree. But yeah. I mean, was there anything? Oh, here, Alabama, I know, is a big one. Between Auburn and Alabama, there's a ton of good NFL talent that comes out of there. I don't know why, but the first person I thought about was Bo Jackson.
I mean, a true legend.
Yeah.
He's the dude.
Rest in peace, his career. Him as the person, but his career.
It's all right. He still had a pretty solid baseball career, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a baseball fan, so I wouldn't know, but that's what I've heard.
That sounds like a personal problem.
Okay. Anyways, did we have anything else you wanted to add to this part of the segment?
Nope,
I'm good.
I'm ready to discuss the future and get a bit more modern with it. I mean, we've talked about it just a little bit here and there, but
no, for sure. All right, so coming up next, we're gonna talk about the modern day NFL and a little bit of the future as well. Coming up next. Welcome back to the Cycle 365. We're back with our conversation about which state produces the best football players. And so, we've talked about the past. The past is cool, it's proven. But let's talk about the present and then some of the future, because we've already done a little bit of that. But I wanna dive deeper into it, because definitely some dudes in the NFL and even in college football who are up and coming and have the potential to, be all-time greats someday. Let's get into it. Let's start, I guess, on the high school level and build our way up. According to statistics I collected, top 100 recruits in the year 2020. So these are high school football recruits. 14 of them come from California, 13 from Florida, 11 from Georgia, 9 from Texas, and then a surprising 8 from Maryland. Which,
oh wow,
what?
Yeah, maybe it's just a fluke year for Maryland. It happens. But those are the stats as of right now for high school. I mean, Maryland's obviously a surprising one, isn't it?
Yeah,
very surprising.
I didn't see that one coming at all. I don't think Maryland. Oh my! I'm kind of shook.
Yeah, well, Maryland also has the top player.
The top player?
Yeah, in the country.
You're kidding.
Nope.
Well, what are the other 7 players from his team?
Okay.
Well, I really hope we don't have a Maryland audience that I'm just offending right now.
Congratulations.
Maryland is the best NFL football state ever.
Oh my gosh.
Some people who are like that, but and then so that was for class of 2020. So these kids are going to come in to hopefully this next football season and contribute and be freshmen on the college level. And so if we're so I'm getting all this from this article that was posted on December 17th, 2019. So it's pretty much after the season was over for most football teams, I want to say. Pretty sure. And so, and just to add this on, the current top 10 in December 17, 2019, which is basically the last week of the season, had surprisingly only 2 top teams from California. It had 2 top teams from Texas. It had 2 from Florida, and then the rest is Maryland, and South Carolina and Arizona. Do y'all want me to say the schools real quick just to preface it and the rank?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So at number 10, it's Chandler High School from Arizona. Number 9, it's Dutch Fork from Irmo, South Carolina. That was okay.
Why are you laughing, bro?
I feel like I'm saying that name wrong, but oh well. 8, it is the hated IMG Academy. I don't like them at all and never will, and we'll talk about that on one of these mini-series episodes. There you go. At 7, a little bit surprising, we have St. Louis High School from Honolulu, Hawaii.
Hey, how about that?
No, they've produced some guys before, I could only think of Marcus Mariota right now. Sorry, Tua Tagovailoa as well. There you go. Yeah. Number 6, you have North Shore. Okay, I guess I have to say the whole part because people not from Texas won't get it. But Galena Park North Shore High School, Houston, Texas, of the better teams in the last couple of years, a recent powerhouse to say. Number 5, we have St. Thomas Aquinas from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. At 4, we have St. Francis Academy from Baltimore, Maryland. At 3, we have Duncanville High School from Texas. At 2, we have Modern Day from California. And then at number 1, it's St. John Bosco, California. So California actually has 2 teams, the top 2 teams in the nation. At least from this past season, are from California. Yeah. Any reactions to those rankings or the stat I just said?
Well, I was just going to chip in that Fort Lauderdale has, I'd say in the past 10 years, I've heard that name more in football circles more than I ever did before.
Yeah.
So I think that they'll continue to, I feel like they're just getting started, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Florida has always been a hot spot, so it's just the development of more Florida teams. Liam, did you have something to add on to that?
It's not surprising, but it's kind of impressive that Florida is building this kind of massive football culture to rival states that have just significantly larger populations than it, and it's impressive, and I'm excited to see who comes out of Florida and who continues to come out of Florida. We've already got some great players in the NFL from it, and it'll be cool to see what else we can get. Absolutely.
And speaking of Florida, there's one more stat I got from y'all concerning high school football. So this stat was a study made by the NCAA in 2017. So it's still pretty recent, I would say. It's the percentage of high school players recruited by D1 schools and by state. So this is out of 50 states, obviously. So it's the percentage of the total recruits that are recruited by D1 football programs. So at number 1, it's Florida at 9.9%. There you go. At number 2, it's Georgia. Kind of high.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, this kind of goes back to the argument, just because you may not have as many Hall of Famers doesn't mean you have some decent, role players or guys who contributed for an extended amount of time being consistent,
Yeah, very true.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there you go. But yeah, so Florida at number 1 at 9.9%. Number 2 in the nation, it's Georgia at 8.6%. At number 3, it's Louisiana, a state we haven't brought up at all, at 8.1%. Which, by the way, they do have a ton of
actually
dudes.
legit.
Oh yeah. I mean, just off the top of my head, they have both the Manning brothers, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Leonard Fournette. I guess those are mostly current as well. Tyrann Mathieu. So
Yeah, Louisiana has a very respectable history in the NFL.
yeah, for sure. Then the bottom part of this list is definitely surprising, but I don't know. Maybe if 2017 was just kind of a weird year. Obviously, it was the year, Cody, you and I graduated from. So there you go. But number 4, it's Washington, D.C., 7.2%. I mean, is that not surprising at all? Or?
No, actually, during my research, DC kind of shows out. Not only they have a very mild historical presence with only 3 Hall of Famers, but DC's not a big area, you know.
Oh.
But their impact on sports, well, first off, you talked about Maryland and all the recruits that they had this year, and Maryland is really close to DC. So when the culture of sports advances in one area, it advances it in both, I think. And, you know, that area, they've been known to produce athletes in sports, you know, just like across the board in a lot of sports. So it doesn't surprise me to start to see football growing in DC and, you know, becoming impactful, honestly.
I mean, sure. No, that makes sense. Because right under Washington, D.C., it's Maryland at 6.5%.
See?
So, yeah, I mean, there you go.
And I mean, those two obviously very closely tied together.
Yes, for sure. Okay, maybe there's not that big of a surprise, but I don't know.
Well, why were you surprised, Simon? Because it sounds like you were surprised.
Well, I mean, for me, it's just because it's a smaller area. It's like, dang, that's interesting, you know. I wouldn't have thought that at all, you know.
Yeah, fair enough. It is really small. Like, First off, it should be a state. That's the most controversial thing I've ever said on the show. Secondly, you know, I mean, it's also not as wealthy of an area as you might think it is, just because a lot of people work in DC doesn't necessarily mean that they live in DC. So it's actually not like a super wealthy area either.
Yeah, sure.
Football's not like a cheap sport, you know, just because of the equipment mainly.
Oh, absolutely. And I understand that. So, I mean, I guess I'm so surprised that Maryland is still like, oh, they're hanging in there. Definitely hanging in there. But anyways, last couple states are really surprising. Well, maybe not really, but pretty surprising. So, these next two are tied at 6.2%. That's Tennessee and South Carolina. And then North Carolina is right below them at 5.9%.
South Carolina's coming for them.
It's true. But it does note that Pennsylvania, Alabama, Ohio, California, and Texas, like, they have some pretty low percentages. A lot. Texas has a 2.7%. California has a 3.5%. Ohio has 4.3%. Alabama and Pennsylvania are both at 5%. So this is as of 2017. Just to preface that again. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's I don't know how accurate that is of a of an indicator of where football is going. What do y'all think about this?
Well, I mean, I have to go with just what I can recollect, basically off the top of my head, is like the influence that Texas has on the NFL right now appears to be greater than most other states. Just because, I mean, like you said, I mean, maybe not right now, but in the past 10 years / like even looking ahead, you mentioned Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, and that adds on to the list that once included Andrew Luck, as well as Matt Stafford. Drew Brees, like you mentioned, is still in the NFL. Like, there's a lot of arms coming out of Texas, and also running backs. You mentioned Adrian Peterson, which is probably the best running back we have ever grown up and watched.
Yeah.
You know, for as far as like beginning of career to end.
Right.
So just thinking about that, you know, there's also not somebody who was elite at any point, but Vince Young was also a huge name to come out of like U of T at least. So I just think that Texas is the first thing that comes to mind. And then also watching like Friday Night Tykes with you, Simon, like just seeing the seriousness that they take it with, or the seriousness that comes with football, even at the smallest level, whether it's healthy or not.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Cody, I don't think you know this. I'm pretty sure you don't. They actually made a couple Friday Night Tyke seasons in Pennsylvania called Steel Country.
Ooh.
Wasn't good.
Oh, no. It flopped.
I mean, I don't want to say a flop. There are 2 solid seasons, but I mean, I don't want to get like too like harsh on them because they're just kids, but they're still the same age. There's me, like I'm biased, and that's just me. But when I was watching that Pennsylvania version, those 2 seasons, there's definitely a significant talent drop from Texas to Pennsylvania. Like you're not going to see a Tavion Lott or Mizell Miller or whoever that you like in Texas Friday Night Tykes in the Pennsylvania one. And if you do, then I don't know. Maybe it's because they're lucky one game and then they have this weird like slump next 6 or 7. So that's just my opinion. That's really harsh, but I mean, hey, you gotta keep it real.
Liam, what are your thoughts on these numbers that Simon's been throwing out, and where do you think talent is coming from and will come from in the future?
I'm wondering where Wyoming is, man.
Bro, there's like 5 people that live in the whole state.
I know, that's a joke. Did you mention Colorado? Where Colorado was on that? If they were on the list
what?
at all?
He didn't scroll down
Far enough. Okay.
far enough.
Colorado's below Texas. Texas was at 2.7%.
Okay.
That's not very high.
That's not very high, no. Like, surprisingly, not very high.
Oh, you mean the percentage? Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I agree. Why would I think it's so low? I mean, like I said, it was taken in 2017, and here I don't want to make too many of my fellow Texans mad, but I'm not gonna lie. 2017 wasn't the strongest class of football players from Texas. Like you didn't have a Kyler Murray or Baker Mayfield or Patrick Mahomes in it. But I mean, you never know. There could still be somebody that comes out of it. I mean, there probably are people that will come out of it, So there's that. I don't know. It was probably just an off year. California is still kind of low at 3.5%, because basically what you're saying is that more D1 players are getting recruited out of the Carolinas than California.
Right.
Like, I don't know about that, Chief.
Yeah.
So,
But how
like
many
you
of those
said.
D1 players are going to the NFL from the Carolinas?
no pro.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Opposed to
glad.
California.
I'm glad you brought that up because I have a stat about the number of NFL players so high school origin wise, but the number of NFL players from each state, which I could give to y'all real quick right now. So, and here I'll go in reverse order. I was about to go 1 to 5. All right. So all right. At 5, we have Ohio with 80 players. Not bad. Like I said, these are players that played high school football, in these states. At 4, at 131, it is Georgia. At 3, at 187, it is Texas. At 2, at 199, it is California. And then last one with 229 players, Florida.
That's a huge jump.
That is a huge jump.
Florida is actually leaving everyone in the dust.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, honestly, there are some pretty big from state to state. The closest one is Texas to California. That's 12 players, which is one and, a backup starting lineup. So there you go. But
That's interesting. I wonder if that has anything to do with the state's economic issues and whether or not they, like a lot of kids feel like they have options as far as like whether or not they can play football or whether or not they have to play football. You know what I mean? Like whether a wealthier state such as New York doesn't have as many kids in football going to school for different reasons. Like maybe they feel they can succeed in other areas.
Well, I feel like specifically talking about New York is a basketball state.
Right.
That's kind of how the city is built. Right. Just because it's easier to put a basketball court somewhere than it is a 100-yard football field.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
And I think, I'm not trying to
know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm not trying to bash on Ohio here or anything, but like there's plenty of room for 100-yard fields in Ohio. So like
very true.
What else are you supposed to do other than play football? So I also think that just like, maybe if options of doing other things has something to do with it. Well, except that wouldn't make sense in Florida, but
why wouldn't it make sense in Florida?
Because there's plenty of options of things to do in Florida.
I mean,
California at that rate.
Yeah, but I definitely think, economic status, class status definitely plays a role in this, like William was saying, because there are definitely a ton of tougher Florida cities and hoods that require, well, maybe not require, but like if you're an athlete in those areas, usually tend to play football and take aggression out on football and and I feel like that's something that's always kind of been a thing in places like Florida and California where there are a ton of stuff to do, but you kind of have to have that money to do those things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
I think that another thing for like the future of football, excluding like Georgia is, well, even including Georgia, is alumni has a lot to do with it, right? Because I know Michael Irvin does a lot in the Florida, especially Miami community for football and for youth that are at risk to get involved with crime. He does a lot to do like grants and stuff like that to get them into football camps. Then, especially we already talked about it in Texas a little bit, how it starts so young with like Friday Night Tykes and stuff like that. And there's alumni that take great pride in that. California, we've talked about how many Hall of Famers they have. And obviously they want more people to play football as well. So I feel like, and I think that that's another reason why Ohio makes this list, is because there's a ton of Ohio players, whether it was at the professional level for Cleveland or Cincinnati, whether it was at the professional level of Ohio high school alumni going somewhere else, or whether it was at the collegiate level of like Ohio State Buckeyes. I feel like they have a strong connection to the youth in those communities, and that also has a lot to do with the output of professional football players.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very fair. And I would say that maybe we're not even looking at the most obvious reason, which is the fact that Florida has 3 NFL teams, California has 4, and Texas has 2. I mean, these are the most NFL saturated states in the nation, other than Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland.
I mean, so, Ohio has 2 as well,
and Ohio, yeah, Cincy and Cleveland. But
yeah,
just that level of NFL saturation, that level of NFL idolization in those states, and the options that they have, and the way that players are available to them. NFL players are available to them on a level that isn't available in, say, Illinois anymore, even though they have the Chicago Bears, or Michigan, even though they have the Detroit Lions.
I mean, for sure. I think that also, I guess it's a reflection of the football culture. Didn't say that, did you?
I didn't. No.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's the reflection of the football culture, in each state, because like they could afford to, support these many teams just because the football culture is big. In Florida, it's a big deal. Texas, California, so that's a reflection on how many teams are in how many teams are in each state for sure, and I guess it definitely plays a role with role models and stuff as well. So, I mean, is there anything else y'all wanted to add onto this? I don't think I have any more stats. I mean, we could go into past Heisman winners, but I feel like the Heisman isn't the best indication of where the.
I
was about to say,
poor,
there's plenty of Heismans that flame out in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, I can almost think of more Heismans that didn't work out than Heismans that did work out. I mean,
for sure.
Shoot. Even Heisman candidates that didn't work out, So, I mean, Johnny Manziel comes to mind immediately. Jameis Winston, Tim Tebow.
Jameis hasn't fully flamed out, though, to be fair.
Jameis still has great. He's not playing like a Heisman in the NFL.
I mean, he had eye issues. Let's be fair to Jameis.
Bro.
Okay, is that really like a...
I want to believe that after he got LASIK that he's going to be elite, but I'm not going to claim that until it happens.
I mean, we never know. You never know. I think weirder things have happened. Actually, I don't know about that, but
stranger things have happened. No, stranger things have not happened. But I don't really have anything else, honestly.
Yeah, me neither.
How about this? So, with everything said, which state is the next up-and-coming prime football factory players? Whether it's NFL, college, whatever.
Obviously, Maryland. No, I'm just playing. I definitely think that's a phase. But I think that Florida is going to get respect as the primary talent producer of as far as NFL starters go. But I think that Georgia has a lot to offer just because I feel like that's kind of where the focus is in Georgia. And, between the Bulldogs don't want to be left behind all the time, right? So I think that they're going to produce more at the grassroots level in high schools and try and get them to stay in Georgia and play for the Bulldogs, and in turn lead to more NFL talent.
Fair enough.
That's fair.
Those are my two candidates.
Liam?
I would say that I would like to say Alabama.
Really?
Yeah.
Come.
I think they have, they obviously have one of the greatest college football cultures in the nation. And I think that I don't know, it's a year-to-year thing, right? I know there's kind of a history of Bama college football players not being able to essentially put out in the NFL, right?
Oh.
But I think that could change any year now.
Okay.
Maybe it's being optimistic, but you never know.
Sure.
You never really know.
Sure. I mean, Alabama could definitely be one of those teams to look out for, or sorry, one of those states to look out for in the future. I mean, they definitely have some. I mean, I don't know. This is the thing that comes to mind when it comes to Alabama is that some families of high-rated prospect might move to Alabama as their kids go to Alabama. I mean, I don't know. That kind of feels like a little weird, but I know Tua's family did that. So technically, his little brother Talia Tagovailoa is a Alabama guy. So I don't know. It could definitely happen. Yeah. All right. For me, Cody, you already brought this up. Georgia. I think that one is pretty obvious just because right now it's, Deshaun Watson, he's from Georgia. Cam Newton as well are from Georgia. Those are the guys who are in the NFL who will further that legacy of just, high school football, I guess, from Georgia and just having talent from there as well. And I mean, looking forward, you have both Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence who are from Georgia. High school football in Georgia. And I don't know. I mean, that's pretty recent, but those are both really, those two players just being, who they are and being successful in college football. Those are pretty good indicators of where, football is going and where the talent is, because Georgia has definitely been producing some dudes for sure.
Gosh, you bringing up Trevor Lawrence throws me for a loop because I remember you talking to me about him freshman year of college.
Really?
Yeah, like one of the first times we hung out, you were like, dude, watch this dude, Trevor Lawrence. And I was like, dang, he's pretty good. now we're college graduates and he's younger than us, bro. I don't want to, like, you turned over a stone that I didn't want to turn over today.
Well, if that says anything, that says I could be a college scout. So, they'll just hit me up. Knew about Trevor Lawrence 3 years before, but anyways, before he went to college. But anyways, yes, one more state that's kind of like, it's a state no one's gonna seriously, consider. But I might beg to differ. Let's say in the next 50 years, that's a pretty broad span, I would say. I would say Hawaii is definitely one of those states you might need to start looking out for. Because they got some dudes, like I already said, in Marcus Mariota, Tua Tagovailoa as well. And, they moving forward, there's still going to be guys like, here's another name that I'll bring up. He's really young. He might not even be in high school yet, I don't think. If he is, then he's an underclassman. But Tyden Lacaden, it might be the other way around. That's his name. He's a quarterback, another quarterback that's going to go to St. Louis High School, I'm pretty sure, in Honolulu, and he's going to be a big-time guy. And look, we did talk about how NFL players, they contribute back to their community. It's really not hard to see a Tua or a Marcus Mariota, like any of those two guys who are known to be upstanding guys to give back to their community and invest heavily into high school, middle school, football in general in Hawaii, and make it a little bit more affordable for guys who have the talent but may not have the development to get them to the next level.
I was about to say that's one thing that kind of bums me out about Jesse not being on here is he has some guys on his board from Hawaii that he's trying to recruit. So he can straight up vouch for the fact that yes, Hawaii is not only producing collegiate talent right now, but also would echo your sentiment, Simon, that they should be producing more NFL talent in the future.
Absolutely. It's just a matter of time. I think it's going to happen. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. Because it's not like Hawaii hasn't had, their share of dudes from there who have contributed to NFL teams. They've definitely have. And this is just another thing. There's a lot of guys from California, may have been born in Hawaii, but played high school football in California just because it's easier. Okay, so does that wrap up this segment? Any last words on this?
Come on, Colorado, produce some more talent outside of Christian McCaffrey, bro.
Outside of the McCaffreys in general.
Outside of the McCaffreys, which...
what about Austin Eckler?
Yeah.
Shout out to Austin Eckler for, being local as far as our school goes.
Yeah, shout out to Calais Campbell too.
Really?
Maybe being one of the best Colorado NFL players ever.
Yeah.
As of now, or like
to come out of Colorado? Probably. Yeah.
You think Calais Campbell is better than Christian McCaffrey?
Calais Campbell been doing it for a decade. Slow down.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey's great. He only been around for 3 years?
Yeah.
So
okay.
Don't disrespect Campbell like that just because he had to
I'm
play.
not disrespecting it.
Just because he had to play for the Cardinals for a long time doesn't mean he's not great. He just played in Arizona, okay?
Didn't he go to a Super Bowl with the... No, he didn't. Never mind. No, never mind. Oh, well. I can't speak for Colorado. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? Oh, moving forward. Is it top 5 corners we're going to do next?
Yep.
All time? Ooh, okay. All right, so coming up next, we got our top 5 cornerbacks of all time, arguably one of the hardest positions to rank. Up next.
right, welcome back to the Cycle 365. Our next segment that we're going to be talking about is the top 5 cornerbacks of all time in the NFL. I know that I'm going to personally be making everybody in the room mad. Hopefully I don't make the audience too mad, though. So let's start with Cody. Cody, you got any ideas about the top 5?
So I'm just going to list off my top 5, and then we'll go around and I'll list our top 5 in order.
Yeah, let's go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yep, sounds good. So at number 5, I have Mel Blount from the Steelers. Number 4, I have Champ Bailey. Number 3, Charles Woodson. Number 2, Deion Sanders. And number 1, Dick Night Train Lane.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Liam, do you want to go next?
Let's let Simon go.
Hey, real quick, Cody, I thought you were going from 1 to 5, and I was about to be like, yo, hold up. Mel Blount at number 5?
Yeah,
Deion
at
Sanders?
number 5.
Or sorry, Deion Sanders at number 5?
Oh, yeah, because you thought I was
one?
going the other order.
Why did I look up NFL players' reception leaders, and it gave me a list of quarterbacks with Jameis Winston at the top? Okay. I'm just trying to make sure I got my things right. I'm pretty sure. Okay, here. I'm just going to go for it. You know, it is what it is. So let's get it. All right. So my list, my top 5 cornerbacks of all time. This was pretty hard, but I feel like corner is a really hard position to like evaluate sometimes because the stats don't always tell the truth. I mean, would y'all agree? Because it's not always interceptions.
For sure. I mean, there's more important stats. There's catches allowed. You know, there's yardage allowed per game.
No, of course, for sure.
And a lot of old cornerbacks don't have those advanced stats, like passer rating against and stuff like that.
Yes, and that's kind of a problem. Okay, I feel like that could be not made up, but like if people just watch a bunch of old games from back in the day and figure that out, that could definitely be done. But nobody's done it yet, even with quarantine. So anyways, my list. At number 5, it's Mel Blount. At number 4, dang, I don't know. It was kind of tough. I'm not going to lie. It was kind of tough. But at number 4, Night Train Lane. At number 3, I had Charles Woodson. At number 2, I had Rod Woodson. And at number 1, it's Deion Sanders for me.
All right.
Very interesting.
Go ahead, Liam.
Yeah, one of the harder, like we've been saying so many times, this is obviously one of the harder lists other than maybe quarterback. You know, just because everybody's so biased about quarterbacks. But I'll just go into it, I guess. Jeez. All right, I got number 5, I got Darrelle Revis. Number 4, Willie Brown. Number 3, Champ Bailey. Or, sorry, no, not Champ Bailey at number 3. I got Mel Blount at number 3. Number 2, I got Champ Bailey, and then number 1, I got Deion Sanders.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See.
Wait, who'd you add at number 2 again?
At number 2, Champ Bailey.
Right.
Which, speaking of, Simon, you're the only one to leave Champ off the list. And as you've mentioned, you're not a Broncos fan, but we got some history for you. He's not here on bias alone. He's actually the most decorated defensive back as far as Pro Bowls go, with 12.
Okay.
In his 15 years. So he has the most Pro Bowls. He was all-decade for the 2000s NFL. You know, they just went through all the all-decade teams. And he's number 1 in pass deflections all time.
Pass deflections? Really?
Yeah. Also, he has 52 interceptions to go with that too. So he didn't just knock the ball down. He could pick it off. But he's the all-time leader in pass deflections.
All right, you've changed my mind. I'll put Champ Bailey number 1.
Okay, slow down. You can't go putting Champ Bailey ahead of prime time.
Sure I can, man.
What do you mean? Sure you can.
Sure I can.
Prime time is He has 5 more All-Pro appearances than Bailey does.
Care?
Look, okay, so
There's
I'm
a lot
not
of disagreement here.
no, but like I'm not gonna get mad at y'all because I feel like legit arguments could be made for anybody, you know, on our list. You know, like I could definitely see Champ Bailey jumping up, but it's my list. I'm not a Broncos fan, so cry about it. Look, man.
Sure, fair enough.
Look, Deion Sanders, I feel like has to be number one, just because. Well, okay, maybe he doesn't have to be, but you know, he was that guy who you could put on anybody, and he could shut anybody down, and so a lot of players, both past and present, have given him his respect and said, you know, like, hey, this is the dude. This is the guy who had no fear, who had all the swagger, who, you know, made it a culture playing cornerback, you could say even. I don't know about revolutionizing. I mean, I'm sure there are some ways he revolutionized it for sure. I personally, I'm not a cornerback, and I've never played it, and I've never come close really to playing it outside of maybe intramurals, and that wasn't even great of an experience. So, like, I can't speak a ton on corners because, unfortunately, corner was one of the few positions I did not play. Yeah, one of the few positions I did not play next to like kicker and long snapper. So there you go. So it's just me, but I feel like Deion has to be at least top 2, top 3. Am I wrong?
I had Deion at number 2. Liam also has him in the top 3. So
Yeah,
I think it's undisputable that Deion Sanders is a top 3 cornerback of all time. I put Night Train Lane ahead of him because first off, he's top 5 in all-time interceptions with 68, and he played during an era where passing wasn't like a huge thing, you know? So for him to get that many interceptions on probably way lower attempts than any of these other cornerbacks that we're talking about is impressive. He still holds the record for most interceptions in a single season with 14, which was his rookie year, by the way. And also, Deion Sanders, for as great as he is and one of the best pass coverage or one of the best in pass coverage, he did not play the run at all. Like, and he didn't really like tackle at the same level that Night Train did. Like, Night Train was a great pass defender, but he was also a feared hitter too, from the cornerback position, which says something.
Deion's pretty almost like universally recognized as not a great hitter.
I mean, I can respect that. I could respect Night Train Lane being at number 1. I mean, you know, we already talked about it, but he was one of the best corners to come out of Texas. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely an argument there. And look, I tried to take, you know, stopping the run into my arguments here, but I mean, I don't know, because as a corner, I feel like your number 1 priority is to cover. And like, okay, feel free to dispute me here. Like I said, I didn't play corner at all. But I feel like, you know, being a good run support guy is much easier than being a good cover guy.
That's fair.
Like longevity wise, and just in general.
Well, I'm gonna say, well, having played corner, you know, like, yes, your first job is to play the pass, but if there's like a toss play, you know, like, that's your job to take care of that. If you're getting ran off the ball by a wide receiver because you're not looking at the whole field, then you immediately become the biggest liability on defense. So being able to play both is incredibly difficult, and that's why I have a dude like Charles Woodson up here as well as Champ Bailey's, because they both played the run really well. And like, yes, Prime Time was a better like pass defender than those guys and was so good at it, but I can't overall. Night Train is, you know, I'd say the second best coverer of all time and the best run play cornerback of all time, especially in an era where there were lots of sweeps towards him, you know? So like you have to be able to play the whole field, and that's part of the challenge too. Is like you can't just make eye contact with the wide receiver if you want to be a good cornerback.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just a difference of systems, but like, at least when I played, it was always the outside linebacker or defensive end's responsibility to stop a toss. So, like, and if a corner's there to make a really good play and paying attention and jump it, then cool, and like stop it shorter and get a really good, tackle for loss, then cool, like that's good. But I don't know, maybe it was probably just a difference of schemes. Like it was always the outside guy, like linebacker or DN's responsibility. So at least, and I know that because I played both of those positions. So yeah, and I never really expected my corners to help. But I mean, that makes sense though. Like I totally get that for sure. And I can't, that's fair. I don't know. Just as a cornerback, I think it's definitely more of a responsibility to cover. Like tackling and stopping the run is always going to be important, no matter what defensive position you play. But as a corner, your prime, objective is to stop the pass. I think safeties definitely have more of a contribution to tackles, I would even say, than corners. So, I mean, it always depends on the scheme. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Liam, I have a question for you.
Yeah, of course. Bring it on.
Did you not have Charles Woodson on your list?
I was the only one who didn't have Charles Woodson.
Oh, really?
I think Charles Woodson is definitely top 5.
And I would say top 5 defensive back just in general, if we're considering safeties and cornerbacks, right? But we've talked about this, and I think if we're going straight cornerbacks, that Charles Woodson has a flaw there.
What if I told you that Charles Woodson only didn't play or only wasn't listed at cornerback for 4 years of his career, and it was the last 4?
That's fair.
So he won.
He was great.
He won Defensive Player of the Year as a cornerback. He won Rookie of the Year as a cornerback. Mm-hmm. And 8 of his 9 Pro Bowls were as a cornerback.
Okay.
Including his Super Bowl win with the Packers.
Okay, that's fine. I still think Willie Brown is more important.
Willie Brown
to have Willie Brown
is on my honorable mentions. Simon, I don't know if he made your honorable mentions.
Yeah, he was right outside the top 5 for me.
Yeah, so Liam, go ahead and school us up on Willie Brown and why he's on your list instead of Charles Woodson.
Well, Willie Brown, first of all, 3-time Super Bowl champion. So Charles Woodson's 1-time Super Bowl champion. Willie Brown winning 3 Super Bowls, all for the Raiders, I think. Yeah, all for the Raiders. He was defensive captain 10 out of 12 years. The only issue with Willie Brown that I would give Charles Woodson a lot more credit over is that they just didn't keep track of tackle stats, right?
Okay.
But he had 54 interceptions to Charles Woodson's 65, which is still fair, right? I just think that Willie Brown was more dominant in his time, personally. As far as his era goes, I think he was more important to his era than Charles Woodson was.
That's a great argument, and we've thrown around the word revolutionary on here, and Willie Brown was one of the first to actually stand in a crouched defensive back stance.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that, Simon.
Yeah, I did. Dang. Willie Brown was really close for me, so I don't even blame you for having him up here.
I just felt like I needed to include Mel Blount, Darryl Revis, Deion, and Champ, obviously.
Could we talk about Darrelle Revis real quick?
Yeah, Simon, it sounds like you have something to say. What you got?
Yeah, I just don't think he's up there.
Really?
I'm sorry. Maybe it's just recency bias and me just not liking the dude at all. But no, always kind of thought he was a little overrated, to be honest. But I still give him his, like, he was still a great cover guy for sure. And he did help the Patriots, right? They won that one Super Bowl with him. I'm remembering that correctly.
I don't see how you can see him as overrated.
He just
overrated compared to like all-time greats.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I am gonna have to actually back up Simon on this one.
Really?
Yeah, because Darrelle Revis, don't get me wrong, for I want to say like 4 or 5 years, he was the best cornerback in the game, but he only has 29 total interceptions, and we're talking nobody on my list has less than 50.
Yeah, I mean, think of how many times they threw to him because he was the best cornerback. And when you're sitting on an island, how many times is the quarterback gonna throw to you when their coach is saying, "Do not throw to the right side or the left side"? You know what I mean?
They said the same thing about Dion.
Yeah, but I mean, at that point, there were more like cocky gunslinger quarterbacks who thought they could, make it work against Dion.
I mean, I don't know. If you compare let's take a look at those cornerbacks. Well, just straight up Dion versus like Darrelle Revis, in my opinion. When they faced against the best receiver in the game, Revis lost to Moss way more than Sanders lost to Jerry Rice.
You would say so?
Yes.
See, in 2009, he held Moss, Owens, Chad Johnson, and Reggie Wayne to no more than 5 catches or 40 yards.
Do you not remember that one-handed touchdown that Randy Mouse caught on Darrelle Revis?
I remember.
That never happened to Deion Sanders with Jerry Rice.
True.
And obviously Jerry Rice is, the best wide receiver of all time, but I
just think that, and another thing about Revis,
that's why I have Dion above Darrelle Revis. Darrelle Revis is my number 5 and Dion's number 2, right?
Well, and I think as far as longevity goes, Darrelle Revis wasn't as good for as long. Tampa Bay was a disaster.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And then he had one good year with the Patriots before getting a huge contract from the Jets again to just be bad again.
Yeah.
Versus some of these other guys like Mel Blount, or I'll even say one guy that just narrowly missed my list being Rod Woodson, as well as Darrell Green. Rod Woodson played for 15 years and got All-Pro half of them,
Mm-hmm.
And then Darrell Green played for 20 years. And a lot of these guys also, these cornerbacks, contributed on special teams, I know that we're not talking best players of all time, but versatility is something to consider. And Darrelle Revis was stuck, on one side of the field.
Yeah, I mean, he was a zone corner who just shut down the entire side of the field. But there's something to be said about that, right? I mean, obviously we all probably would agree that man schemes are harder, or maybe not harder, but more complex on the player, right? But to truly be able to shut down, to be like a true shutdown zone corner, is extremely difficult.
Cody, what do you have to say about that? Because I feel like man is pretty you just go man to man, and usually it's just whether you got the right athleticism or technique, Zone. What do you think about that?
Zone is way easier to play because you get back to your zone and you play that, and you play what comes your way, right? There's less room for mistakes when you're playing man, because if you fall for one double move or one head nod or one pump fake, that could be a touchdown, versus zone is a bit more, I'd say, conservative, especially from a player standpoint. you have a bit more freedom and you have more room for mistakes too. So like, you know, playing zone, you can afford like, okay, they kind of beat me off the line, but if they stop now for a curl, like that's fine, you know, that's okay. But you know, in man, it's like, okay, if they catch this curl and then they get away, I don't have any help, if that makes sense.
For sure.
So like, and then, you know, obviously running across the field can make things way harder too, like post routes and stuff like that. Those are a nightmare to cover because, well, okay, they're coming 10 yards at you and then they're going 10 to 15 yards across the field, including like the length of the field too, versus, you know, like there's less energy consumed playing zone as well. In my personal experience / opinion. I won't deny that Revis was the best cornerback in the NFL for a few years, but I don't think that he's an all-time kind of guy. Not top 5. I'd say top 10 maybe, but not top 5.
Fair enough, and that's, you know, that is one of the issues with Darrelle Revis in his legacy is he's 34, you know, and he didn't play that long ultimately, and he doesn't have the longevity that other people have.
True. So, were there any players that you haven't heard mentioned or had on your list that you want to talk more about?
We mentioned Rod Woodson recently. I feel like he's a top 3 corner for sure, though, right?
See, I was looking into it, and he only played corner. Like his career is basically split entirely in half as far as where he was listed position-wise.
Okay. Oh, so was that a knock on him because of that, or?
Yeah, I think that him switching to safety kind of ballooned his interception stat. So, you know, because I mean, you read it, 71 interceptions, you're like, wow, that's really high all time. But it wasn't like Night Train Lane or Prime Time or Champ Bailey or Mel Blount, where those interceptions were at the cornerback position primarily. That's how I see it. I don't know. Liam, what are your thoughts on Rod Woodson?
I think I feel pretty similarly. I think it's kind of hard to. I mean, if we take that 8-year period, right, we could base it off of that 8-year period, but I don't think we can base it off of the entire career that he's had, right? I don't think we can say he's a top 5 cornerback and include all of his safety stats.
See, Rod Woodson, I think, is just like a sad casualty of us doing a top 5 safeties and a top 5 cornerbacks, because he's a top 5. This is going to sound silly, but he's a top 5 defensive back of all time, but not a top 5 safety or a top 5 corner, if that makes sense. Talking about like specializing.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess so. Like, he still has 47 interceptions at the cornerback spot, though, out of 71, and that's still the majority. So, like, and, you know, and he was a big part of those Pittsburgh teams back in the day as well. So, you know, I have a soft spot for him. So yeah. I feel like he should definitely be up there. It sucks, you know, because we did split it up the way we did. So, you know, it is what it is. But I don't know. I feel like I have to put him up here because if he's not on the safety list at all, then he has to be somewhere here.
That's fair. I mean, he never led the league in interceptions as a cornerback. He never won a Super Bowl as a cornerback. You know what I mean? So those are marks against his cornerback legacy, I would say, that because you have to, in my opinion, take those as separate legacies as, you know, cornerback, safety, and then a greater defensive back. Look at it.
He is an honorable mention for me, though, and I didn't forget about him.
Yeah, definite honorable. I have like 5 honorable mentions.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, he was also playing in the same era as Deion Sanders as well.
Yeah.
Which probably overshadows him just a little bit.
Yeah. Maybe a little underrated. Just go throw that out there, but all right.
What are some honorable mentions you had, Liam?
Aqib Talib, honorable mention. He currently has, I think he's tied for second or third with the most defensive touchdowns of all time.
Yeah, he has 9, I think.
Pick sixes. So, maybe, and I mean, he's well known as when in his prime, he was well known as a shutdown man corner. So, very honorable mention. I think he will probably make it into the Hall of Fame. I don't think he's ever had specifically the dominance, and I don't think he'll have the longevity to be called one of the best of all time. But I would definitely put him maybe top 10, maybe top 15. Another honorable mention for me would be Richard Sherman. I think that just goes without saying. It's pretty obvious. He's gonna keep going. He's gonna have the longevity. He'll be a maybe not a first round Hall of Famer or first ballot Hall of Famer, but certainly could be. And obviously has, I think, the career to say that he's top 10, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you guys think about those two?
Richard Sherman is definitely up there for me. Simon, what do you think?
Yeah, no, for sure. I was actually going to say that I definitely feel like Richard Sherman should be a first ballot Hall of Famer when he's out, because, he has a Super Bowl ring, still has time to get another one. He's been to 3 Super Bowls, so there you go. He's headed up really good defenses and whatnot. And everyone wants to bash on him because he doesn't play man and whatnot. And sure, that's something to bash him on. But I mean, Richard Sherman could definitely be considered one of the best zone corners of all time, if maybe not the best. But, I'm just putting that out there. So yeah, I think Richard Sherman, there's no doubt there.
I don't know if this is controversial, but I'd take Sherman over Revis.
Really? Interesting.
I might actually do that as well, but that's just because I don't like Darrelle Revis. So,
well, I don't like Sherman.
Yeah,
so it was actually hard for me to say that, Simon.
Okay, I'm still saying, yeah, bro. Well, I just like Sherman better than Darrelle Revis. You got to have a little bit of attitude to you, and I just think Sherman has more swagger than Darrelle Revis.
I don't know about swagger. I think attitude, maybe.
Okay, but also Richard Sherman's way smarter than Darrelle Revis as well. He does have attitude, but if you look at some of the quotes he puts out, it's very educated. He was a guy who graduated from Stanford, and he's someone who's extremely smart, and he's well put together when he does talk about, serious topics.
Of course. Go ahead.
You go ahead, Liam.
Okay, yeah, he's very educated, very well-spoken guy, especially when he's in a calm state of mind.
Yeah, especially.
I just hate him.
Why?
Super Bowl 48, man.
You didn't live what we lived through, okay?
Yeah.
You've seen the Steelers lose a Super Bowl, but not the way we saw the Broncos lose a Super Bowl.
Have you ever left a Super Bowl at halftime, Simon? Or should I say after the kickoff of halftime? The Super Bowl party is what I mean.
Yeah, I have.
Have you ever
ironically that Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Hey. So you get it. You get it.
What do you mean, do I get it? I was happy. I made the right choice. I picked the Seahawks that game.
Now just imagine that's the Steelers and you hate your life and you'll never love a cornerback named Richard Sherman ever again.
Oh, thing is, that'll never happen to the Steelers.
And then afterwards he says, I think the real Super Bowl was the NFC Championship.
And you want to be mad at him, but he was also right.
But also he let Demaryius Thomas catch for 108 yards and a touchdown on him.
We got him
there. So it's how can you say that you shut us down when DT caught for over 100 yards and actually did something?
When did he catch those yards, though?
In the Super Bowl.
No, I mean when in the Super Bowl, first half or second half, because those are big differences.
I think it's split up pretty well, actually. I think DT was the only person who could get anything going.
DT was actually the only person in Denver who did a single thing the entire game.
Yeah.
And also, right. Sherman has more career picks than Darrelle Revis, and is still looking like he's playing pretty
longer.
Well.
He's played longer than Darrelle Revis, to be fair.
I mean, Simon and I have already expressed that longevity means something to us.
Yeah, like probably by the time that Richard Sherman retires, I'll probably have him in my top 5.
He's only 32.
Yeah, exactly. So by the okay, then I would be willing to put Sherman in my top 5, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would replace him with Darrelle Revis, because I'm thinking about it and I go, if we're taking into consideration the fact that Sherman is still going to be playing, maybe even for like 4 more years, who knows at this point.
Don't go saying stuff like that.
Yeah, right. Hopefully he never wins another Super Bowl again, but at that point, 4 more years, I could see him being a top 5.
In Jimmy G we trust, baby.
I think Sherman's going to have a solid career as a safety whenever that comes around, to put that out there.
For sure. And I mean, that is a fallback for a lot of good cornerbacks. It's a fallback to safety. And once you slow down and start, once your mind goes.
Once your mind goes? What do you mean? Hold on,
Liam. But anyways, Simon, do you have some honorable mentions that you think should be talked about more, or?
I don't think so. I feel like y'all already mentioned them. A lot of my honorable mentions were guys that y'all had on y'all's teams. Sorry, on y'all's list. So like Champ Bailey for sure. I guess you could throw in, Darrelle Revis, Richard Sherman, if you really want to. Willie Brown was one who was right. He just got edged out just barely. I wrestled with that one a lot. So, yeah. I mean, I don't really have any more. Do you, Cody?
Yeah, I'm a little sad that no one else talked about Darrell Green.
Oh, Darrell Green.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. Okay. Yeah, Darrell Green as well, another Texas kid.
Yeah, Darrell Green, very good.
Yeah, I think the reason I didn't bring him up is just because, I don't know. I mean, he did a lot of things. He was always known as a speedy guy, but maybe that overshadowed some of his accomplishments, I would say. But he's still a really good corner.
He has 52 interceptions, right?
And Rod Woodson has 47 as a corner alone.
Yeah, I just said 54.
What?
I just said 54. That's still the plus 50 club.
I know. That's good. I'm not saying it's bad.
And then, he also won 2 Super Bowl rings for the Washington football team. And
I forgot.
He played for a long time too. In his age 40 season, he had 3 interceptions. That's insane.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy, actually.
I know, for sure. Agreed. He was right outside the top 5. I feel like I've said that about a lot of players, but he really was, though. Oh.
Okay, Simon.
Well, he was. I don't know. Actually, I would probably still put I said Champ Bailey. Probably put Champ Bailey up there, closer to the list than Darrell Green. But
I also have Champ Bailey over Darrell Green. So
yeah,
I also have Champ Bailey over Darrell Green. I got Champ Bailey over everybody.
Yeah, I know.
It's with Champ Bailey. It's really hard for me to forget the Baltimore game, Liam.
I mean, what cornerback ever got traded for a running back who ran for 1,500 yards in both of his first 2 seasons and got traded in his 3rd season for a cornerback, and then that was considered a steal of a trade?
I mean, the scheme has a lot to do with that for me, just because Mike Shanahan knew that he could turn any running back into a 1,000-yard rusher. So You know,
and then what were Clinton Portis's yardage? What was Clinton Portis's yardage in his first 2 years after being traded to Denver? 1,315 yards, 1,516 yards.
Clinton Portis was retired way before Bailey was.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, no, I know. I'm not trying to make the argument of like, I'm not trying to make that argument, but it's like, if you, I don't know.
There is certainly like a level of like story-like craziness to Champ Bailey's career.
Yeah. The only mark against Champ Bailey's career is the fact that he doesn't have a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. He still balled out in the playoffs for us, though. Well, like I said, except for Torrey Smith, bro. That wasn't cool.
Yeah, but you know, when you get old, sometimes it happens.
Sometimes it happens at the worst time.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the absolute worst time ever.
But I still think, as far as like leaving behind almost a spotless record as far as personal character, and almost leaving behind a spotless record as far as personal play, I think Champ Bailey is top.
Yeah, I agree.
Fair
Just
enough.
not in my top 5.
He was quiet.
Yeah, I mean, he's a silent killer, man.
You're naming your kid Champ.
Bro, don't talk about a top 5 cornerback like that.
What do you mean? Why would you
respect
name
on
your
that
kid
name?
Champ?
I
Come
would.
on, bro.
I mean, I might name my dog Champ, but like,
Or like give my son's middle name Champ.
I might do something like that, but I probably wouldn't name my son's first name Champ.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna cap with you on that one.
Okay, well there you go.
But hey, that's the future Hall of Famer you're talking about.
There ain't no disrespect.
That isn't his name.
What?
His name is Roland.
Okay, so it's not even that much of a. Come on, bruh. I wasn't disrespecting Champ Bailey like that. Why is his name Roland? Maybe it's because Champ
Roland?
sounds cooler.
I mean, Champ
You're gonna
Bailey is a
name
pretty
his kid
dope
Roland.
football name, no cap.
Yeah, Roland Champ. It's pretty cool.
Really? Hughes? Sorry.
But I don't have anything else to say on this cornerback debate. Do you guys?
Up one though.
Does anybody have Chris Harris Jr. up there as a Broncos guy? No. Cody? No.
No, there's so many good cornerbacks.
Yeah.
But I mean,
We'll
as far
give
as
Chris a couple more years. You know what I mean? He could easily be in there if he goes to, I can't remember what team he went to, but with that new team, if he has.
Well, here's what's gonna happen. The Chargers, they're gonna play like one game. Chris Harris is gonna be like, "Wow, we got killed 70-0. I'm gonna demand a trade," and then they're gonna trade him somewhere, and then he's gonna do better.
Are you sure he's not going to retire at halftime? He's not going to be like,
"Oh,
this is terrible."
Oh, who was
The
that?
real GOAT.
Who was that?
Vontae Davis.
Vontae Davis,
Yeah.
number 1 cornerback of all time, because he said this team sucks, and he just left at halftime.
He's like,
Oh.
"Hey, I'm going to go," and the team's like, "What?" And he's like, "See ya." Got that real Irish goodbye.
Facts.
Vontae Davis is the GOAT. You heard it here first. That might be the title name of this.
Vontae Davis, best cornerback of all time.
We'll make it.
But
We'll see. All right. So is that it? Did we have anything else you want to mention on this topic?
nope.
I ain't got anything else.
All right. That's good. So coming up next, we have another segment of Good Take, Bad Take. This one will be interesting. Sure. Coming up next.
Welcome back to the Cycle 365, episode 39, recorded on June 29th. As Simon said earlier, happy Independence Day. And we got another good take, bad take for you guys. And there's some internal debate about whether this is a good take or a bad take. Here's the take.
Yeah, we'll talk about college football later, but I was looking this morning at the quarterbacks that are going to be in this year's draft, and it's stacked.
Oh, yeah.
It is stacked. You have Jalen Hurts, Jake Fromm, Tua, and then this guy from LSU, like
Burrow.
He's gonna play in the
He
NFL.
played lights out
Yeah.
against U of T.
He's a
Right,
solid
Simon?
one. Yeah. Hey, what about the boy Sam Ehlinger though? He played great against the top 5 defense in the nation in LSU.
I don't think we shouldn't bring up Sam Ehlinger with these other guys in
Whoa.
the draft class.
What? Really? You weren't impressed at all that he threw for over 300 yards?
No. He did a great job. I just don't think he's an NFL quarterback.
I think he'll still get drafted. I think he'll get drafted in the second tier quarterbacks, in these ones that we just talked about. But he'll still make it in the NFL. I don't know if he'll start, but like,
I don't think he should start right away, but he's a good,
He's
project.
I'm just
player.
saying, don't put his name with Tua, Fromm,
it hurts.
and Hurt.
That's the take.
Bruh.
Simon bringing up, first off, a little bit of a bad take, but we'll get to that one later about Jake Fromm because episode 5 is titled Jake Fromm is for real. But anyways, Simon, let's hear you. We'll give you a chance to defend yourself. That's why we haven't chosen any of Jesse's takes, is because he's not here to defend himself. Why do you think Sam Ehlinger can be in the same conversation as Joe Burrow?
Here's the thing about Joe Burrow, and this is an argument that could be made about almost any other college quarterback that has went to the NFL or will play in the NFL someday. Joe Burrow had a lot of talent on that LSU team, because I forgot about this, but I did bring up that LSU had a top defense that Sam Ehlinger kind of ripped up. He played a really good game, and I rewatched that game. And that game was really close. It came down to an onside kick that, in my opinion, Texas should have got. But they said that he didn't have possession, which is, I don't even know about that. Because I know if Ehlinger had the opportunity to drive down the field with, what was it, like, I don't know. He had like at least 30 seconds left, only 40 yards to go. I want to say they're only down by a touchdown or a field goal. One of those things. I feel like he could have beat LSU, and this conversation would be much different, because that was one of the top college games of that season, and honestly one of the better ones of the last couple years. And so here, I'm going to go back to what I was saying about Joe Burrow. He had a lot of talent, and I did talk about that top defense, and this is the same top defense that, has a ton of guys who stayed as well. So there you go. But they also sent first rounders to the NFL, like Caleb Von Chasen, Patrick Queen, Christian Fulton as well, Jacob Phillips, Rashad Lawrence, and and Grant Delpit. And I'm pretty sure two of those guys were first round guys, and then 2 more were second round guys. That's kind of insane for a college football team. That's pretty good, for Sam Ehlinger. And so against LSU, Sam Ehlinger had he had 401 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, along with 60 rushing yards and a touchdown. Oh, he was also sacked 5 times as well. So there you go. And, he still played really well against a top LSU team that not many other quarterbacks played well against. I'm sorry, Cody, I hate bringing this up, but I have to. Jalen Hurts didn't exactly light up the board against LSU. And look, I know a lot of people will bring up the whole, LSU, they played multiple games and they had all that momentum, but I still feel like if Texas was to play LSU 10 games into the season, it would be the same argument, like, they didn't play LSU while they're in the playoffs. It was different. But the thing was, football is still football. The talent's still there. It's not like it regressed. Like, I get momentum's everything, but it wasn't like this was the first game of the season. I'm pretty sure each team played at least 1 or 2 games before, which is honestly enough, before going into the season and playing a top ranked team. And, there are multiple other quarterbacks who LSU defense kind of, ravaged and didn't, I guess, give them the same, how should I say this? They just shut down multiple quarterbacks that were really good, as well as Jalen Hurts. They did, challenge Trevor Lawrence significantly. They did challenge Tua, who, by the way, lost that game versus LSU. And I'm pretty sure LSU was playing Alabama in Alabama. So there you go. And, that's I don't know. I feel like that's something that shouldn't be overlooked. As well as Joe Burrow did have a ton of talent on the offensive side of the ball, including, these 2 first-round picks and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Justin Jefferson. And then as well as having 2 linemen in Damian Lewis, Lloyd Cushenberry taken, Sadiq Charles as well. I'm pretty sure those 3 guys were taken in the top 3 rounds of the NFL draft. And then tight end Steven Sullivan and, oh my gosh, what's his name? Moss. What's his first name?
Landon, isn't it?
Landon? Either way, it doesn't matter. Moss, who was arguably a better tight end than Steven Sullivan. All of them are in the NFL. And so, in total, LSU had Thaddeus Moss. There you go. Yes, so Thaddeus Moss played out of his mind in the playoffs. Made some big plays against Texas. So in total, LSU had 14 players selected in this past year's draft. And that's not even including, players who were underclassmen or who didn't enter the draft this year, like a Jamar Chase, like a Derek Stingley, both guys who are expected to be first-round guys in the future, who could probably have been first-round guys this year, if I'm being honest as well. As well as, I think Terrence Davis, I want to say as well. He's another wide receiver for them. So LSU was stacked. But the thing was that Sam Ehlinger still went toe-to-toe with Joe Burrow, and it basically came down to this Texas defense just not being good enough. And I brought this up in that episode, but they had multiple players who were out, at least 5 or 6 who were out with injuries. And the ones who were there, like the starters who were coming off of an injury, they were obviously being rushed, like star safety B.J. Foster. You could throw in Caden Stearns in there as well. And honestly, this Texas defense wasn't going to stop LSU, no matter, even if they were at full strength, if I'm being honest. But the fact that, Joe Burrow did what he did against a depleted Texas defense, and then Sam Ehlinger did what he did against a fantastic, LSU defense, I feel like says a lot. So, yeah, here, I'll leave it at that so that you, Cody, and Liam have something to reply to. So go ahead.
Liam, what are your thoughts from, I guess, an outside perspective, seeing as that you didn't know who Sam Ehlinger was until we started this conversation?
Well, just looking at his stats, he in 2018, very much so competed with everybody else. Let's see. In 2018, he had 41 touchdowns to Joe Burrow's 21. Obviously, Joe Burrow in 2019 had 66, right, which is just insane. And then Sam Ehlinger only had
32, I think, was his passing totals.
Yeah, he had 42 total that year. 32, or I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. 39 total. 32 passing, 7 rushing. So he's becoming a better passer, potentially. And he's relying less on rushing, even though he's got more yardage with the same number of attempts. So he's getting better at rushing. That could just be a byproduct of a better offensive line, right? Which is probably what that is, honestly. But he seems to be competing, and I don't know. The issue is that I don't see the Longhorns as being that much inferior to LSU, personally.
Really? Really? Okay.
Yeah. Obviously LSU is better, right? But I don't see the Longhorns as being miles worse, right? So for Joe Burrow to be doing what he did is insanity, first of all. And I think Sam Ehlinger, if he was better or if he was on a similar level, granted he's younger, right? So there's always something to be said there. Should be able to compete. But I don't think he did in the same way.
For me, something that I look at, from I guess a team leader standpoint, because Sam Ehlinger is the face of the University of Texas, in my opinion. I think that he is the best player on that roster. But I also think that Joe Burrow was the best player on his roster. I don't think that many guys go that high if Joe Burrow doesn't throw over 60 touchdown passes and wins a national championship in such dominant fashion. Something I want to bring up about the LSU Texas game was it was week 2, right? So, Simon, you brought that up that, like, you know, it was earlier in the season, but week 2 is very soon. And then you kind of see the role that LSU gets on, and the only close game that they had after that was Auburn, who they beat by 3. That was their closest game of the season, right? And that was way later. But, you know, you talked about how Jalen Hurts didn't do too well, but OU scored more points than Clemson did. Granted, there is a wider, you know, victory of margin of victory for those two teams, but LSU skyrocketed from, I'm not even sure what they were ranked to start the season, but they ended the season at number 1 versus Texas, where in that week 2 game, they were ranked 9th and they finished 33rd in the country by the end. You know, we talk about these other guys that were mentioned, you know, Jalen Hurts played in playoffs for college football in both of the teams that he played for. Tua won a national championship. Even at this time, Jake Fromm competed in a national championship. You know, Joe Burrow competed in a national championship. But Sam Ehlinger hasn't even been able to get out of the Big 12, much less into the playoffs.
It's fair, but like I said, I definitely think Texas has a much inferior team. Look, thing about Sam Ehlinger, he hasn't had a receiver selected higher than the 4th round. I could even push that back more, maybe higher than the 5th round at all in his whole career. You know? And that includes, you know, the likes of Devin Duvernay, like I brought up, Colin Johnson. I mean, I don't even think the years before that he even had a receiver taken. You know, like, here's the thing, like, Tom Herman, I believe he's a good coach. I think, you know, this next season will be a big one, assuming the season actually happens. The talent that's there, because Texas has to compete with a lot of people, not even in the country, just in the state alone. Like, the biggest threat is from inside the state. And then I could throw in Oklahoma and LSU as well, because they're literally right there. And so it's tough to bring in some really good recruits. You know? And I just don't think the Texas roster is that good. Vontae Ingram ran for 800 yards, basically, that season, and he was the leading rusher for Texas Longhorns. And then, you know, you look over at LSU, Clyde Edwards-Helaire most definitely had more than 800 yards, at over 1,000. Doesn't even include receiving yards that he had there as well. So, look, no disrespect, Joe Burrow, he's good, but he definitely had dudes that helped him out. You know, like, there were plays that Joe Burrow would make excellent throws, would throw a guy open, and they'd make a play. There are also plays where Joe Burrow would throw a dump off, or maybe just kind of throw it up there, and his guys would go ahead and make a play either way. And so by the end of the season, I'll admit this, the chemistry for LSU was insane. Early on in the season, it wasn't like it was nothing at all, because they're still a football team. They're still there. It's just the chemistry wasn't as insane, I would say. Also, it was in Austin, so there you go. Like I said, you know, I still believe that this Texas team isn't that good. I'm pretty sure they didn't send any linemen to the NFL the last 2 years. Haven't sent a running back to the NFL since probably Malcolm Brown, who's a career backup for the Rams and, well, right now the Saints. And that was probably before Ehlinger. That was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And so, and then, you know, they haven't really sent that many defensive players to the NFL as well. And look, this is just my belief that Oklahoma has simply recruited better. Oh, Tom Herman, he didn't inherit a great team like Lincoln Riley did. That's just facts. You know, Lincoln Riley got two Heisman winners, and then because of that, he got one guy to transfer who was a Heisman contender. And he's consistently had receivers who were years better than anything Texas has put out. And that hurts for me to say, Cody, because you know I'm a Texas fan. But I'm sorry, but CeeDee Lamb, Marquise Brown, I could even throw in Sterling Shepard. Those are all better than any of the wide receivers Texas has put out, possibly in the last 10 years. I could even go back further, maybe in the last 15 years. So I'm just saying, Texas hasn't had a lot of luck recruiting well, and the fact that Ehlinger can consistently get better, it's not like he had an insane jump like Joe Burrow. Like, he's shown that he could be a consistent force, be a leader, make it happen even when there's not really much to happen there. It says a lot, in my opinion. I think maybe y'all might be, I guess, rating Texas team a little bit better than they should be. I just don't think highly of a lot of those Texas players. And sure, there were guys who came out. I just don't think that any of those players are on the same level as, the players that came out of LSU. And I think that's also, a testament to the SEC as well. The SEC is a pretty tough conference that will always attract some of the best in the country. That's my belief. And I think, the fact that LSU overcame a lot isn't just on Joe Burrow, but it's on the entire team as well, because they had to beat a lot of teams, and they were a pretty historical team to do that, because they were playing against some really good teams. And so don't do that just having one good player, going up against a ton of other teams, because I'm just being honest, there's a reason why Sam Ehlinger is capped at where he is, because he doesn't have a guy like a Jerry Jeudy, or more comparable like a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson or even a Thaddeus Moss, if I'm being honest.
I definitely agree with you that the LSU team is really talented. It's just really hard for me to think that Sam Ehlinger is on a similar playing field as Joe Burrow, who, I mean, we talked about it on the show after the season was over that LSU had the best season of any college football team that we had ever seen, right? And Joe Burrow, in turn, had the best season of any college quarterback that we had ever seen. They didn't just beat records, they shattered records everywhere they went. And, even being an Oklahoma fan, Jalen Hurts was, I'm pretty sure he was actually the runner-up for the Heisman, and he did a lot of heavy lifting on our team too. He did a lot of running, and he was the reason that we won a lot of games that we did, especially when it comes to that Baylor game that we had to come back in. But Joe Burrow is just on a level beyond even Jalen Hurts, or we didn't mention on the episode, but Justin Fields, and he's just a different tier, I'd say. So that's why it's hard for me to put Sam Ehlinger in the same breath as him, just as it's kind of hard for me to, and like I said, a lot of it came down to just record, and just you said, the SEC is tough, but I'd say that Texas had a decent chance at winning the Big 12 this year. I mean, none of us saw Baylor coming, and competing for it. And then, OSU they had Chuba there, which makes it a bit harder to compete, but it's definitely an easier conference to win. So I think that Texas, despite its shortcomings as far as transfer to the pro level goes, still had a chance to compete even within its own conference.
Yes, but that's because the Texas team was definitely significantly inferior, though, to a lot of those SEC teams. Look, I know the Big 12 isn't the best. I mean, they still got some dudes there that you got to worry about. You know what I mean? Another thing is that Texas definitely struggled with a lot of injuries. I'm almost positive the only person that wasn't injured at least one game this season on the Texas roster was Sam Ehlinger. Everyone else was out at least 1 or 2 games. And that's tough to work with, if we're talking stat wise and even just win percentage and winning games, it's hard to win a game when you don't have your whole team there, when you're losing a third of your squad to injuries, almost every week, and so I get it. It's hard to see Sam Ehlinger as be in the same conversation as Joe Burrow right now. At the same time, it wasn't like Joe Burrow had a very progression, I would say. It was very all right, he had some pretty mediocre seasons, and then he just skyrocketed it out of nowhere. And I feel hey, congrats to him. He put in the work. He did great. At the same time, that talent was probably already there. There's talent there that people were already talking about. like a Grant Delpit, like on defense specifically, like a Grant Delpit, Caleb Von Chase, and what's the other corner's name? I always forget it's not Greedy Williams. Christian Fulton, even Patrick Queen as well. Those are guys that for the season, a lot of people kind of held in high regard as is. I can't say the same thing about Texas, and I just think comparatively, it's hard to compare the Big 12 to the SEC. I get it though. It's why Joe Burrow is great because he dominated in the toughest conference. But when it comes to straight talent, like just straight, as a player, I feel like Sam Ehlinger could definitely be in that same conversation as a Joe Burrow. It's sad because he chose to play in the Big 12. He chose to play for his dream school for Texas. That's just how it rolls, and that's what he wanted to do, and I respect that. But if he was to go into the SEC, play for maybe even an Auburn or a Georgia, I could definitely see him putting up better numbers than, I wouldn't say Joe Burrow, but some of the quarterbacks that are already there, possibly beating Joe Burrow with some of those teams that are much more talented than these Texas Longhorns teams. So I get it. Joe Burrow, no disrespect, like I said, he broke records, he shattered records, he did great, but he didn't do that by himself. There's a reason that these guys were still drafted pretty high. Like, of course, Joe Burrow helped, but it's hard to say that these guys wouldn't have been drafted anyways.
Where do you see Ehlinger going this year, and what does he have to do to, I guess, take that next step, take that Joe Burrow step to be in the same, first off, what does Ehlinger and Texas have to do to win the Big 12? I think is where the first comparison goes. And then what does he have to do to even be like a first round guy? Because I don't see him as a first round talent quarterback. And I think you would probably agree with me on that, right?
No, I would see him as a first round guy. I think they just need to play the season. I'm just being honest. Like, they just got to play the season. That's their biggest threat right now. It's not any of the other teams. Like, I mean this with no disrespect to Oklahoma, TCU, Oklahoma State, whatever, but they just got to play the season. You'll see. I think that's a lot to ask, I feel, because, we've already talked about it. I think, honestly, if they play the season, they dominate the Big 12 and they win it. And Sam Ehlinger, his stats, it'll show for himself, because I think, this year especially, he's finally going to get some dudes who could play. Like Keontae Ingram, he was somebody that a lot of people had faith in. After 3 years since starting as a true freshman, maybe not as much anymore. But they did finesse the number one running back in the country in Bijan Robinson. And he's somebody who's expected to start as a freshman, potentially over Ingram. Even with the whole COVID thing going on, it's widely considered that he's a much better running back and player in general than Keontae Ingram, who, by the way, dropped the most wide open pass you'll ever see in your life in that LSU game. That probably would have won the game for them later on. So just throwing that out there. And I just honestly think that Ehlinger, the stats speak for themselves. These last couple of years, he's gotten better pretty much every game as a passer. And even this last year, he's gotten better as a passer. And right? Yeah, he's gotten better as a passer. And he had a terrible roster, but he had barely a roster to work with. So the fact that he had to work with guys that were in and out every other game, and you really didn't know who you were going to have, says a lot. And look, I think it's important to bring up that Texas did whoop Utah, who was widely considered to have the best defense in the Pac-12. You saw guys like Justin Herbert, top quarterbacks struggle against that Utah defense, but Texas handily, they took care of Utah. Basically, I don't want to say without a problem, but they beat them down pretty bad, and that's a really good indicator of things to come, I would say. And so with everything going on, unless Ehlinger gets hurt or the season doesn't happen, it's really hard to believe that he won't take that next step forward and just be better, and show off. He finally has a roster that's a little bit more established. You got some good transfers in Tariq Black from Michigan, who, he was kind of forgotten a little bit there, but he's on the come up for sure. You had the number one running back coming in. You have an offensive line who hasn't, at least they have another year under their belt. I don't know how much you could expect out of them, but you could realistically expect better. maybe. I don't know. But I just believe that if Texas was to play out this season, I just think that everything that I predicted will come true. They just got to play it out. That's it. Stay healthy, I guess. Actually, yeah, staying healthy is another one too, because that's something that the boys have struggled with for the last 2 years. So,
well, if Justin Herbert can be drafted in the first round, then Sam Ehlinger definitely can, because I think Ehlinger is at least better than Herbert. So we'll see what happens. Oh, God, I still can't believe Justin Herbert got drafted as early as he did. But we'll see what happens this upcoming year. And we'll see if Ehlinger skyrockets up the boards and has a chance to compete for a championship of some sort.
Hey, Liam, did you have something to add?
No, I think you stated it very eloquently and very very well. And ultimately, my knowledge in the entire situation is a little bit lacking. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think you've pretty well convinced me.
Oh, really? I made you a believer?
Yeah.
A Bellinger, one might say.
I mean, it is
okay.
obviously very hard to deal with lots of injuries and lots of like a lack of talent, or maybe not lack of talent, but a lack of like transcendent talent, like Burrow was potentially able to have. I do think that, they always say like iron strengthens iron, or iron sharpens iron. So it's definitely a sense of like Joe Burrow enables his already really good receivers to be even better, and they enable him to be even better, and so on and so on and so on, until it's just like, well, here's 60 touchdowns in a season. You know what I mean? And so obviously if Ehlinger just doesn't have that available to him, he's not going to be able to do as much with it. But he still did pretty respectable.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, he could only handle, what's in his hands, and I mean, that's something that I'm pretty sure he's figured out a really long time ago. So,
yeah.
Woody, what's your opinion? Do you think Sam Ehlinger could realistically take that jump, or are you just on the fence?
I am on the fence right now, just because
I'd have to say that I'm on the fence as well.
What? You just said you were a believer.
Yeah, I'm a believer, but I'm on the fence that he could take a jump to 60 touchdowns in one season.
Okay, well, if he gets to 50, how about that?
If he gets to 50, I think he could get to 50 if Texas built it around him, right? And built it truly around him and truly built it, if that makes sense.
I think that this year is a fair year to judge him, because I'd say that as far as for Heisman hopefuls go, he's competing against Justin Fields, and Ohio State just had a huge turnover of players going to the NFL, right? Which obviously isn't the same as like talent pool, but Justin Fields is playing with a pretty different squad than he did last year, and that includes the defensive side especially. And I think that, if he's able to surpass Justin Fields and win the Heisman basically from under Justin Fields, then I'd say that the hype is warranted. But that's kind of the expectations that he has to surpass for me.
I see it happening. I believe in the guy. Obviously, I'm biased. Somebody who comes off to me as incredibly mentally tough. He hasn't really given me any reason to doubt his progression.
Right.
So,
I mean, he's only 21, right?
Exactly.
So
he's much younger than Burrow.
Yeah. So he's got plenty of time. He'll be 22 this year by the time the season starts, and he's got a lot ahead of him. And even if he doesn't take that quantum leap in college, maybe he'll be the player who takes it in the NFL. You know what I mean? I could easily see him going first round in the NFL.
Easily.
Yeah, he'd also be competing against Trevor Lawrence this year. Almost forgot about that too.
Yeah.
So if he beats out both of those guys for the Heisman, then I'll say it wasn't a bad take.
I think he'll probably go. He'll probably lose to Trevor Lawrence for the Heisman. That would be my take. But I could easily see him going first round, just knowing how the past 5 years have been for quarterbacks in the first round. How it's just anybody really,
Okay.
I mean, you almost get schlups coming out of the first round sometimes for quarterbacks.
Justin Herbert.
Yeah, Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Like I said, like Cody said, if Justin Herbert can go in the first round, then Sam Ehlinger, who certainly seems better. Now that I've been able to watch one highlight video of his, I think he'll be able to go in the first round pretty easily.
Fair enough. I mean, I think he'll go in the first round. I don't know if he'll win the Heisman. Trevor Lawrence still has a much better squad than, in my opinion, than Fields or Ehlinger. So there's no excuse there, even with him losing Justin Ross for the season already. So,
I mean, Trevor Lawrence is just a much larger name already.
Yes.
I think Justin Fields might, but that's a good take, bad take for another day, I guess.
There are a lot of takes made off of this one.
Yep, we'll have a really meta episode where we just do good take, bad take to the 64th power sometime. But
I'll say Mellinger's fault.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, what a guy. But anyways, is that it? Do you have any closing comments?
Nope.
Oh. Thank you for listening to the Cycle 365 on our 39th episode, recorded on June 29th, 2020. Once again, happy early July 4th. Check us out on our social media at the Cycle 365 on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. In addition, make sure you find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube as well. On the lookout for more mini-series episodes. I'm not going to lie, I don't know which one is coming out next, but I'm sure it's going to be great because all of them have been great. Check them all out if you haven't yet. And yeah, I am one of your co-hosts, Simon Villanos.
Cody Stoffer.
And current guest, Liam Hughes.
And we'll make it official if you come on.
Yeah, we'll see.
But anyways, that's it. Peace.